Thanks to all of you for being here with us tonight. It's a great night to dive into the Peatlands. As you can see, we get to put our gumboots on and get out there. This is the Hudson Bay lowlands. It goes all the way from Manitoba to Quebec. It's the size of Germany. It's got billions of tons of carbon in it, but it is also home. It's home to many First Nations.
So a peatland is a special type of a wetland where all of the plants that are growing on the surface, when they finish their life cycle and they enter the soil, they don't really decompose, and they form what we know as peat. And this peat can actually reach incredible thicknesses. So this is sort of how these systems are such important carbon sinks. They lock carbon away, but we have to understand that that's a slow process and not easily restored or fixed.
Mama Baggio is a former nurse, and she sent us her question tonight. So we're going to now hear from Mama Baggio.
Hello, Janet. How come we don't know more about these peatlands in Canada? Why haven't regular people been told about this marvelous ecosystem?
That is a tough question to answer. I've thought a lot about that. The first thing comes to mind is just simply, these are very tough landscapes for people. I think certain cultural groups, my own included, have often seen wetlands as these terrible environments. They're environments that breed disease. They're places that need to be cleaned up. They need to be drained. They need to be put to more, quote, productive uses. I mean, we're fortunate that not all cultural groups have this viewpoint, and we just saw some of the wonderful imagery and voices from the Mushkegowuk members who were talking about some of their cultural value and understanding of the peatlands, and even the term breathing lands. And what a wonderful way to express the value of these important landscapes. So I think we have a lot of work to do to celebrate the importance of these systems.
We come from a territory that's northeastern Ontario, covers roughly about 1/3 of Ontario. So it's a huge, vast area. We have a council of 7 First Nations that was established in 1984 that came together. These nations came together to look at and deal with regional issues, that they were facing at the time, and one of being which we're talking about tonight, the breathing lands. If Canada's boreal forest is the king of carbon, then its crown jewel is the Hudson James Bay lowlands. And so it's a very important environmental asset that we are trying to protect and bring attention to, not only locally, but globally.
In addition to this importance from a carbon perspective, wetlands are such hotspots of biodiversity, and they really occupy that in-between space between the terrestrial realm and the aquatic realm.
The Hudson Bay lowlands provide essential habitat for a diverse array of bird species. At least 165 birds are known to breed in the region, and dozens more use the region as a stopover during their migration. And it's not just that the area hosts a wide range of species, it's the sheer volume of birds that use the area that's really astounding. Each spring, tens of millions of birds migrate from across the hemisphere to the lowlands to rear their young and take advantage of the region's bounty of resources. So what is it about this place that's so appealing to birds? Well, the answer is wetlands. And if we take a look at this land cover map, we can see, this is 324,000 square kilometers that stretches across northern Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec. And you can see from all of this light green that it's covered in 80% wetland.
Okay. To us, the geese are very important to our people. And we learn about the geese, and we learn, first of all, how to call them when we're just little kids. So we want to teach you guys how to do that, okay?
Ready?
Okay. Go ahead.
There we go.
You want me to pluck it? With birds and geese, we're taught at an early age the importance of us being part of this ecosystem. And then we have these rites of passages that are taught depending on what age we are. And there's a ceremony that goes with the first goose that you get. and it's shared with your family, it's shared with your community. So the goose has always been a part of our culture in that way, in terms of its teaching.
Before we get to charismatic megafauna, I just want to have some time for fish. Connie, please talk fish and the Hudson Bay lowlands.
I am a fish biologist by training. I love fish. I assume that everyone is the most excited about the fish. So we'll assume that this is the most exciting part of the presentation. So this is a really important area for freshwater fish. When our team at WCS Canada started to compile all the records of all the fish, we found at least 50 species of freshwater fish, and this is the highest freshwater fish biodiversity in Canada with low human impacts.
Dr. Connie, polar bears, caribou, go.
They're not quite as good as fish, but they're pretty good. So the peatlands are actually home to two types of caribou. There's the boreal caribou that are more sedentary, and then there's the migratory caribou that we actually saw in the video where, they form these, huge herds of sometimes thousands of animals. And so for both of these animals, the peatlands wind up being really, really important. This is the southernmost population of polar bears. We often think of polar bears as these creatures of the ice, which they absolutely are. But for this population of polar bears, the peatlands are also really important, especially as denning areas. So the females will come in, and especially in the permafrost peatlands, they'll have their dens, and it's a safe place for them to raise their cubs.
We make documentaries about water environmental challenges all across the globe, and how these challenges are so interconnected, and really looking at what are the solutions, how can we solve these big challenges together.
With us, it's always just follow the water. And when you follow the water in Ontario, you end up in the north. And it didn't take long doing our research to realize that, who's working on the peatlands, who's working on conservation, who's trying to protect them. And immediately we ended up speaking with the Wildlands League and being introduced to the Mushkegowuk Council and all the inspiring work that's going on to try and protect the peatlands and conserve them, not just for the people of Ontario and Canada, but really for the entire world.
When you look at the Ring of Fire, it's here, right? And the lowlands are here. Everything goes down into the bay. If development goes forward, and if anything should happen here, we're going to feel the brunt of it down in this region. So not only downriver, but through the muskeg, through the wetlands, because water moves underneath the wetlands.
There's currently 5,000 square kilometers covered by mineral claims in the sort of Ring of Fire area, and altogether this region holds about 450 million tons of carbon. And so if only 4% of that was developed, that would be the equivalent in sort of CO2 equivalents of all the reductions in carbon that have happened between 2005 and 2021 in terms of Canada's emissions reductions. And so just having these ancient peatlands means that if they are damaged or drained or destroyed, the carbon that's locked within them, it's irrecoverable in our lifetimes. It's irrecoverable on any scale that's relevant for combating climate change. And so these peatlands have been cooling the planet for thousands of years, and they will keep doing it, but we have to let them.
One of the solutions you're working on is a gigantic Indigenous protected area for the Hudson Bay lowlands. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
We've been working with a lot of elders in this project, the conservation of the NMCA, James Bay and Hudson Bay, and also on the terrestrial side. And one of the key things they taught us to use in this process is wakotuin. The word wakotuin means relationship, building relationship amongst ourselves as people, building that relationship between ourselves as Indigenous people and the settlers that came in the provinces that have been created in Canada as a whole. So wakotuin also makes us look at relating to the animals and to the birds and to the land. So everything that we're doing has to be about building relationships, and that's what we're doing here. It does require that we all work together. When we do our conservation on the land especially, we're finding out the jurisdiction is Ontario's. according to the Constitution of Canada. So therefore, we have to get Ontario to work with us. All we're asking is let's all sit down together. All of us sit down together and work out how we're going to move ahead